and welcome back to Tambellini's Top of Mind podcast. Today, we're here together to talk about building a top-notch remote employee experience in higher ed. Over the past year, admissions leaders have had to work especially hard to build and sustain a positive and collaborative team culture in a remote environment, all while their roles have drastically changed. Enrollment teams are the frontline ambassadors of their institutional brand and customer experience to prospective students. We're joined today by Lukman Arsalan, who joined Franklin and Marshall College in August 2020 as its first Dean of Admission. Lukman has a very unique and interesting perspective to share on the challenges he has faced and strategies he has employed when assuming a newly created role with a new team at a new institution. Welcome to the show, Lukman.
Thank you so much, Katelyn. You really captured exactly what I am experiencing.
Well, I can't wait to hear about this experience starting a new job in a pandemic, in a remote first culture. But before we get too in the weeds, can you tell us more about Franklin and Marshall College?
Yeah, absolutely. So Franklin Marshall College, or known as FNM, is a small private liberal arts and sciences college located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And it's a small institution, about 2,300 students in enrollment, and a very diverse student background population. It's an institution that meets 100% of financial need for every admitted student, regardless of citizenship. And it's pretty astonishing to me when I moved here. I realized that 20% of the student body were international students from over 50 countries. And FNM is one of the institutions that was a founding member of the America's Talent Initiative. So there's also a lot of students that come from very diverse racial backgrounds, as well as different socioeconomic backgrounds. And so that's a quick summary.
Wonderful. Thank you for giving us that overview of the college. And what has the 6 months that you've been there been like? What does this look like for you?
So it's interesting, you mentioned it's the first position. I joined Franklin Marshall College. This is public information, was going through a budget crisis pre-pandemic, and COVID-19 really just simply accelerated the college's sense of urgency and to innovate rapidly. And the position as an inaugural dean was created that I assumed leadership of on July 1st of 2020. And it has been really fascinating to me. It's fascinating because the position I sit at is a senior level position where you get to see a lot of the behind the scenes work. And I started a position that is a remote based, where I've never met my employees in person. And my interview process was also virtual based. Mm-hmm. So it certainly has been a unique experience. And I know that many of those who are listening share the experience that I'm currently going through if they sit as CIOs at campuses or enrollment leaders. It is an interesting position to be in, where I've never met in person the staff I currently work with. And I would say it also presented a huge opportunity. As an inaugural dean, I really had this support from the president and her cabinet, and from my vice president, to create what we envision FNM post-COVID environment, and through COVID. How does it look like? And we're currently at a point where we are looking at the post-COVID business plan, so to speak. And what are going to be some sustained activities, collapsed behaviors, and modified behaviors of what we are doing now.
So, in some ways, COVID has brought opportunity to the institution.
I would definitely say yes. I think it brought an opportunity. It also, because we are in a virtual environment, communication and clear communication was something that I learned I have to practice to ensure that there is a common and shared understanding and expectations of how we move forward.
Mhm.
And the COVID induced virtual environment really allowed me to be in a place where I have to thoroughly explain what is going on, how do we move forward from this, and how do we operationalize it. And it created this shared experience created this shared understanding for employees around what do we need to do and how do we do the work. We started making a distinction between what is hard work and what is the right work. And hard work, I appreciate hard workers, and but you want to be doing the right work with that. And we measure the right work through outcomes versus activities. So we look at, what was our level of engagement with prospective students and interest for a specific event that we did versus I sent out 10 emails. Started making a distinction between those two. And so it was a lot of recalibration into an environment that didn't necessarily have these so discreetly spelled out pre-pandemic. So that was certainly something that I had to quickly learn so that I could then in turn set that structure for my team. And it's fascinating to be in this position because over the holidays, I got so many beautiful cards from my employees, and it really brought me to tears because I realized, wow, I am making a difference in these employees' lives, even though I've never met them in person. And we are having meaningful interactions over a virtual environment. Is it easy? No. It's tough. Before we started the recording, I was mentioning to you how it's a time when I have a stressed team and I am stressed as well, but I have to lead the team and make sure that I'm bringing positive energy every day into that team. And we started discovering kind of what works and doesn't work. And we celebrate small wins. It's hard to have these big accomplishments, and not everybody has big accomplishments. And so we started really acknowledging small wins toward a big project that we're working on, so that people feel motivated and energized and excited about the work that they're doing. And the reality is sometimes, we could have fun activities built in, but there's not so much fun in manipulating data Excel sheets and reviewing and reading. And so a lot of my time then goes into really being empathetic and listening to my team and to their concerns. I think at the beginning of the pandemic, we were all dealing with the psychological shock of it. And we're now at the stage of the psychological stamina and how do we sustain doing with the challenges that we have. And so it's really being able to, I hate to use a word that is so overused now, but how might we just be nimble and adapt very quickly? And if there's something that I shared with the team when I started, I said, listen, we are charting roads that and seas that we've never sailed before. And we're doing this together. And we'll make decisions that we might back out of when we realize this is not the right thing to do. And so I think a helpful exercise for my team was, how do we acknowledge mistakes and how do we learn from them? I love design thinking, and I always talk about, we're prototyping something until we nail it down. And if our prototype fails, it's not failure. Because we get lessons learned and we redo it and do it again and do it better. And it made me realize the employee experience is really important, and how employees feel in the office is important so that we could deliver an excellent and extraordinary customer experience. And I know customer is a taboo to say in higher education, but ultimately, whether a student is on full financial aid or not, they are customers of the college. And we have a lot of constituents that we interact with that are not just the students, parents, counselors, alumni, and our partners in different vendors. So in order for us to really present an outstanding customer experience, the employee experience has to be seamless. And so it was very important to ensure that my employees were having an extraordinary experience so that they could present that to the customers. And that's where you kind of find that crossroads between what kind of the business world will talk about as CX, customer experience, and then EX, employee experience. And it merges at the chief experience officer. And so it was a kind of a moment where I was encouraging the team to think about it that way, that we are chief experience officers. We're not offering programming, we're offering experiences for students and people that are interacting with us. And how might those experiences be relevant that convey empathy to our constituents in this moment? Because initially, we were using a language that avoided and didn't acknowledge what was happening. And that quickly makes us not relevant. We had to be relevant, empathetic, and we had to rapidly innovate. And we had to think broadly about really the end of the funnel and who enters the college and why do they enter? And those who don't enter the college and matriculate, where do they go? And we use that as our base in order to create recruitment partners. So we lose, Franklin Marshall College loses students to the UC system and to large public institutions. And I thought, this is excellent. I know this information. Let me partner. And so I partnered with the Dean of Admission at UC Berkeley and at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, to large public institutions that we lose students to. And I thought, let's recruit students together. And because I knew our engagement would be high, but I also knew that I can distinguish myself from these large public institutions by truly offering an extraordinary experience for our students. And so that's where kind of the hustle came through.
Lukman, that's so smart. And I completely agree with you. Last year, I read a book called The Power of Moments. And this idea of creating an experience is so important. To your point, both for the students, but also for your employees. If your employees don't have the structure and empathy, it's so hard for them to give that to your potential students and current students. And I think that that's a really wonderful way to be thinking about it.
If there's a point of interaction that I have with anybody, employees, coworkers, constituents, and I could make them feel special, then that's a win. And everybody is wearing an invisible sign that says, make me feel special. And so our job is to read that sign and feed that sign. And you feed it in different ways. Sometimes the sign might say, don't talk to me, and you feed it by not talking to that person. And, it goes back to this emotional intelligence of understanding nuances, even if it's on a computer screen, to understand how folks are feeling around those pieces, and how do you razzle and dazzle in a webinar when everybody is doing a Zoom webinar. And so I'll give you an example. I started, we did virtual breakfasts with counselors, and we sent out a gift box to these counselors that included some goodies from Lancaster and some things that resemble Lancaster, because they can't travel to Lancaster, and we really wanted to share a piece of Lancaster with them. And we gave them gift cards for coffee, and it worked out. The attendance was so high, and the language that we use in these invitations matter. And these were invitations, and instead of saying, we're inviting you to this, I phrased it where I said, this is an exclusive invitation, and it's invite only, and it's non-transferable to you. And that person feels so special that they are doing this just for me. And in fact, some people emailed and said, I'm sorry, I can't make it, but can so-and-so attend on my behalf? And we said, no, it's for you. And we picked you for it. Yeah. And people want to feel that, instead of saying it's free to apply, you say, I'm extending an exclusive invitation to you to apply at no cost to the college. And so, rephrasing those pieces to not devalue the brand, and also to make the folks that you're interacting with feel good about it.
I think that you've been so thoughtful around how you build the experience for everyone you're interacting with. And it does matter if you can surprise and delight people. If you can make them feel significant, it makes a really big difference. They remember you and they want to engage. It feels really positive. So you mentioned you're doing a lot of Zoom webinars. What other tools are you using? Are there internal tools that you've adopted to try to make your relationships with employees better or more engaging?
Yeah, we talk about these are unprecedented times, and I reminisce the precedented times, I'm like, do you remember precedented times? F&M is a Google institution, and so we use Google Hangout internally, we use Zoom externally, and we use Slack as an internal tool. But a piece to make my employees feel special, I actually handwrite cards to them. I have mailing addresses of all employees, and I try to think about what are they experiencing, because they are experiencing exactly what I'm going through in terms of this digital fatigue, so to speak. And we tried and continue to try to create these fun activities. And I know usually when the boss says fun activity, it doesn't sound so fun. So I've excluded myself out of that. I've had a committee of folks work on what is fun for them so that they could do it. And, it's been, they have been actually fun, where we did childhood photos and trying to guess who's that person. And it really helped the team get to know me on a personal level, because when I interact as the Dean of Admission in an inaugural position, when I am under the microscope and there are pressures in terms of enrollment, tuition net revenue, discount rate, and everything in between, from academic rating, etc., my time is so stretched thin. And so when I interact with the staff, I do find myself interacting with them in a very limited basis that are project-based and task-based. and I pop up on Zoom to share the 30,000 foot level and assign projects. So I realized that my interactions with the staff were through these 15 minutes or 30-minute meetings in which I pop up on the screen and it's business and I run through it and on to the next Zoom call, And so from my standpoint, I think I'm getting it done. I'm checking my boxes and I'm going it through it. But from their standpoint, it's intimidating. I up when there's a need of getting something done, and if it's at my desk, it always tends to be quadrant one. It's urgent and important. I'm always operating under immense sense of urgency, and that's what I'm conveying to them in these short meetings. And so I realized that I really needed to create opportunities in which the team could also empathize with me and realize that I too am human and I also go through similar feelings and emotions. And I hosted, especially at the beginning of my job, I hosted a lot of town hall meetings. Because a big shift in my leadership style. I tend to be very clear with my expectations, which sometimes can be overwhelming for people because it's very direct in terms of how I'm conveying the information. And I do it purposefully because we are in an environment where I don't want people to think about what I did not say. Think about what I am saying. And so it was a big shift in terms of leadership style. I created a leadership team. I created a structure that was different from before, so that we could really streamline our activities. And also, we started assessing what are we doing right and what can we improve. And so we really changed pieces that are significant internally. So we changed how we are evaluating students. We conduct holistic evaluation. The way we conduct it now really measures and quantifies non-cognitive skills and characteristics. And in order to do that, we had to really change how we are reviewing those files. And we went into a committee-based evaluation. And I did that purposefully because it requires 2 team members on Zoom reading the file together. And I did that because I wanted to increase engagement of my employees with one another. I know if my employees are feeling crappy, my prospective students are gonna get crappy service.
Yeah.
And
of course,
and
right? You
so,
can't, if you're drained, you can't give of yourself.
That's true. So it was a lot of really assessing efficiencies in the office. And it was also, avoiding only doing urgent and important things, but rather doing the job as it would normally be, so that we're not delaying things to, well, once the pandemic ends or once we're back on campus. So it was really trying to normalize as much as possible how we're doing our work and what we are doing. And it was also explaining how meaningful and purposeful it is to scan documents and complete a student file, and how that impacts the organization and the institution. So it was really highlighting to each member how important their job is and how critical it is for the success of the organization. And I send a lot of articles for my team to read and be aware of what is the landscape looking like. Because while we might be in what people call Amish country, we're not competing in only Amish country. We are measuring ourselves against other top liberal arts and sciences colleges. And we need to be aware of what is happening around us and discuss the challenges that others are going through and compare it to the challenges that we are going through.
Lukman, do you think that remote is sustainable long term? I mean, is there ever going to be a need for everybody to be back on campus together?
So if I were working for a private company in New York City with real estate that I'm paying for, I would probably be really asking this question and thinking about it at night and saying to myself, why am I paying for all this rent when the jig is up and we all can work from home? So I think if higher education institutions were certainly pushed a lot during pandemic to make decisions quicker than they do. And at higher education institutions, shared governance is an important piece of what makes an institution. And so while it's important, the undesired outcome is that sometimes it can be slow because as you gather everyone's opinion. If I am looking at my office, there are certainly positions that don't need to come to the office. And as we look at a post-pandemic era, I can't imagine that all my employees would be back in the office on the same day. I think that we would enter a hybrid model where you work in the office for a few days, you're working from home other days, we're purposefully de-densifying the office. And that's where, while we are not vaccinated right now, we're in Pennsylvania, educators are in the next phase. And it might be till end of March, April, until employees of the college get vaccinated. But sooner than that, we have to open campus up for visitors. So as we look to open the campus for visitors, I have to really carefully think about the safety and well-being of my employees. And also, how do I de-densify this where I only have a handful of critical employees in the office at a given time? And then what's difficult is I think we're all getting used to working from home. I am certainly getting used to it. Yeah. I don't like it, no, but there are pieces I enjoy. There are lifestyle changes that have happened that it would be a little bit difficult for us to go back into was a pre-pandemic environment. And I don't see moving forward, I don't see the world going back to what it was as a pre-pandemic era. I think we should really just open our arms wide and embrace how we are really so beautifully creating this new normal that we are entering.
Lukman, we're at the end of our time together. I have one last question for you, which is what advice do you have for institutions that might still be struggling with this remote experience?
I would say it's really important to create a balance for, especially if you are leading an organization and leading a team. You know, you really have to think about compassion and containment, and looking at compassion from the point of crisis of the conditions that employees are feeling. Some might be depressed, feeling lonely, anxiety, health concerns, isolation, heavy workloads. And so to be aware of that mental well-being and intervene quickly, and to really soothe the team by taking the time to listen and be daring to stay in the hardest moments in those. And I would say there are a couple of approaches for that. You know, one could be I don't know, or sharing your own feelings of discomfort. And I think that there's an enormous value in leaders who are able to express their own insecurities around the circumstances, because it really then disarms the team around it. And I would say the next step to it is to energize everyone every day. And really, it is difficult when even leaders are exhausted, but it's important to use language that is positive, that's feel good, how we're pulling this on this together and showing how to do it together and not just saying it. And I would say with that, my advice would be to celebrate small wins, because it's hard when we are all faced through budget cuts, retirement benefit cuts, salary reductions, furloughs, and layoffs, to simply just wait for that big moment of, we made the class at the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's really important to celebrate small wins, if they are impactful wins for the work that we're doing.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Lukman. It's been
Caitlin.
wonderful to hear what you've been building at Franklin and Marshall.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. I really appreciate it.
That's the end of our Top of Mind podcast. Thank you for listening, and we will be back next month with another new show. In the meantime, you can check out Tambellini's free and member-only resources at the Tambellini Group